Listen, we are checking out a bird's tier list by TierZoo. Okay, I've been binging a little nature vids, and I heard I needed to watch this. So let's get it.
So when the metal hit his mug, he just sunk in place. 100K Holla, chillin' Bahamas. Come home to your crib and throw in your mama.
What is good, HollaSquad? We are, you know what I'm saying, the littest squad on the YouTube platform. Listen, today we are back with another reaction, and I see an owl looking like it is about to destroy this mouse. Y'all can't see the mouse because the mouse is like right there behind me. But we got the birds tier list by TierZoo. But before we hop into this, make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. If y'all like this content, check it out down below. I leave the original link. Go binge the content if you like it. But we're about to check out this birds tier list. And I don't know what's going to be number one. The bald eagle? Probably not. Vultures? I don't know. Let's check it out, though. Let's get it.
Birds are one of the most popular playable classes in the game, with a huge number of successful builds and tons of cool strategies. However, some of these strategies have clearly been more successful than others. So today we'll be going over the bird tier list to see which bird ranks highest. But before we get into looking at specific bird builds, let's do an overview of the basic attributes and special abilities the bird faction has access to, as well as a quick rundown of the history of the bird faction. So,
yo, ain't no way these birds out here with the Mike Tyson.
Birds are one of the newer factions in the game, joining the game's roster during the latter part of the Mesozoic expansion.
Yeah.
They began as an offshoot of the dinosaur faction that was specifically adapted to arboreal gameplay, but when the devs dropped the Cenozoic balance patch, these small avians were the only dinosaurs not to be hit by the banhammer. Fast forward to today's meta, and birds are one of the most successful factions in the game, owing this success to a handful of powerful, unique abilities, in addition to the obvious flying attribute. First of which is their beak. Now, beaks were not an entirely new ability for the reptile player base, but birds went far deeper into the beak skill tree than most dinosaurs ever had, with many bird players opting for extremely specialized beaks to give them an edge in specific scenarios. However, even the basic beak offers plenty of advantages. While their lack of teeth does mean that they deal reduced damage with their bite attack, birds can be far more accurate with their pecking attacks, enabling them to hit weak points or secure grabs on smaller targets, such as the thin hurt box of a snake. Beaks also offer moderate protection, potentially reducing headshot damage and nullifying imprecise counterattacks.
Yo, these birds are demons. Hold on. Let me find out they got the demigod player build. They stretch fours.
Beaks also offer some of the best stab type damage in the game, which, when used accurately, can deal massive damage on crit.
Insta-kill.
Beaks are also excellent tools for dealing with parasites. In fact, they're so good that oftentimes, other less dexterous players will party up with bird support players in order to have a better matchup against parasites. Feathers are also a unique and powerful trait exclusive to birds that provides excellent cold protection without causing the user to become too over-encumbered to fly. Feathers also offer pretty substantial defense against crush-type attacks, which is especially important to birds because of their hollow bones trait. Hollow bones are another ability meant to synergize with the flying playstyle. Now, a common misconception is that bird bones are hollow in order to reduce equipment load, but actually they're hollow in order to let bird players fill them with air, which grants them a massive boost to their maximum stamina. Without this, it'd be extremely tough for a bird to fly for any significant period of time. The trade-off, of course, is that a broken bone not only deals serious damage, but also potentially reduces the player's maximum stamina by a huge margin.
That's crazy.
So a bird player will need all of the blunt damage defense it can get. And speaking of blunt damage, the bird's lower bone density means the bird's own blunt force strikes, like wing attacks, also deal reduced damage. The top tier bird builds are the ones that can best capitalize on the strengths of their class while mitigating potential weaknesses. That about covers the basics, so let's get into the tier list.
Yo, listen, I didn't know these birds had build types like this, bruh. They add in VC to traits that I didn't even know existed for players.
At the bottom of the tier list, we have two flightless bird builds,
The
both
dodo
with
bird.
essentially the same glaring weakness. These are the kiwi and kakapo. Kiwis are hilariously part of the same faction as ostriches, emus, and cassowaries. For some reason, they opted to give up the flight ability, but didn't use the extra available skill points to spec into gigantism like the rest of their squad did. The result is a build that can literally only exist on island servers where there is no active mammal player base, aka New Zealand. The
That's
Kakapo
tough.
is a flightless version of the Parrot, and although parrots are undoubtedly excellent bird builds, the flightless weakness is too glaring to ignore. Due to invasive species like rats and cats establishing a presence on island servers, both of these flightless bird builds are seeing major declines in their player base, and I would not be surprised if they all ended up switching mains. Flight is just too strong an ability to pass up, which brings me to the next builds on my tier list.
Ratties?
So I see
is
what these
this?
builds were going for. Being giant could potentially make up for the lack of flight, but in practice this didn't quite pan out. While these are technically the strongest birds in terms of base power and defensive stats, for their weight class they are woefully underpowered. They're one of the few megafauna builds that can be taken down by cheetahs, when they should be
Bruh, imagine running away. You got 3 cheetahs hanging on your back.
able to completely annihilate cheetahs with their powerful claws. Their huge weak point presents a lot of opportunity for counterattack too, so if they ever get too bold, they're setting themselves up for a tough loss.
Oh, yeah.
Lastly, the fact that they are forced to nest on the ground forces them into an even more vulnerable position than most birds, as ratite eggs are extremely valuable as loot.
Facts.
Objective defense is not an easy task even for high-tier builds, so for ostriches, emus, and cassowaries, this is a huge hurdle.
He not gonna mention the part where these dummies put their head in the ground? Oh yeah, them things, you know what I'm saying? They put their head in the ground, think nobody can see them. That is the worst evasive defense of any build, okay?
Next on the tier list we have the Hummingbird. This build spec'd purely into mobility and just about nothing else, and as a result is
Crazy.
the only bird build with full 360-degree movement, similar to a dragonfly. This, combined with its extremely small size, enables the Hummingbird to very quickly change direction mid-flight, allowing it to easily dodge attacks and fly around obstacles.
Woo.
More importantly, it allows the Hummingbird to access nectar, which is an extremely valuable source of energy that's normally inaccessible to birds, since birds are usually too heavy to land on flowers and not agile enough to access nectar mid-flight. This all sounds great, but the Hummingbird also has 2 very serious weaknesses. The first is pretty obvious. They have no combat prowess at all, and any attack they fail to dodge will send them right back to the character select screen.
The gulag.
But
Hey.
in addition to that, the insane energy cost of their flight ability, combined with their total lack of fat storage, means hummingbirds will run out of stamina very quickly if they can't constantly find food. To me, this is a high-risk, high-reward strategy where the risk far outweighs the reward, so I have to place them in F tier.
The fact that hummingbirds are in the same tier as freaking ostriches speaks to how trash tier ostriches are. You can say whatever you want about the rest of the birds on the F tier. Ostriches, you're too big. You like the one dude on the basketball court that's 6'5", can't lay the ball up around the rim while you wide open. Get the ostriches out of here, bruh.
At the bottom of D tier, we have the pigeon. The pigeon build doesn't really have any critical flaws, but they're held back by mediocre stats. In particular, the pigeon is sorely lacking in any combat-focused stat, like power or defense. They do best in cities where their excellent navigation ability grants them an extra bit of safety, by nesting among high-rises in loot-rich locations. But even in cities, pigeon players tend to be the main source of XP for higher-tier predators. Plus, if you're just looking to play a bird build that's good at looting cities, there are better options available anyway. The Peacock build is another generally understated build, with high HP but little else to rely on. It does, however, have one of the highest intimidation proficiency bonuses in the game, gaining a massive buff to all intimidation checks when its Eye Spot Feather ability is activated. As impressive as this ability is, the Peacock's actual attacks do very little damage, so any player able to resist being frightened will have a pretty easy win. The Peacock's diamatic display also blocks vision behind itself, making a stealth approach by a third-party attacker extremely easy. And while they can escape by flying, the feathers of a peacock are so heavy that getting airborne takes a bit longer than most birds, which can be the difference between dodging or dying when under attack.
Oh yeah, these Fam only use 1 foot. These is L's.
The Flamingo is a bit of an AFK class. Very minimal skill is actually required to pilot this build. They opted to spec into the filter feeding ability, meaning all they really need to do to gain experience and progress their character is pick a random spot in the lake bed and start digging around with their beak, scoring free wins against things like snails and shrimp. However, when faced with a challenge from any player anywhere near its size, this build totally falls apart. They rely on water to impede the approach of predators in order to give them time to escape when attacked. However, this doesn't always work. Their pathetic defensive stats mean they go down in 1 or 2 hits, and their slow flight startup means that oftentimes players will have time to rush them down even when they're in the water. This is an easy build to rack up.
Bruh, fam said, come here. Little flamingo, home. Eating that boy.
A bunch of experience with, but also a very easy build to defeat if you know their weaknesses.
He was about to rip him open!
Ah, the humble chicken. Often compared to the T-Rex to exemplify how far the dinosaur faction has fallen. While I disagree with the implication, I don't disagree that chickens are indeed a low-tier build. While they aren't anywhere near as totally helpless as the kiwi or kakapo, they're still a barely average statted bird that lacks the ability to fly for any extended distance. They can certainly hold their own against most similarly sized opponents, but with poor escape options and no unique abilities, this build faces an uphill battle against most opponents.
Oh my god!
Well, okay, I shouldn't say no unique abilities, but to be honest, their fast respawn rate kinda backfired on them due to humans using the factory farming strategy.
Facts. Hey, listen, how is the vulture this low? It's called a vulture. I'm gonna let him explain. All I want to say is I played mad games of Zelda. Them chickens was destroying Link. I was in there trying to fight the chickens. Next thing you know, I'm on 1/4 of a heart running out the barn. All right. So them chickens on Zelda had a little bit too much attack power, if you ask me. Let's get it.
Next in C tier, we have the Vulture build, the tankiest variant of the Raptor subclass. A good tank build needs to be able to accomplish 2 things. The first is area denial, which vultures do quite well. A few of them can easily lock down a carcass, one of the most contested points of interest you'll ever see on the map. They can do this because of their large size and acidic projectile attack. The other thing a tank must be good at is shrugging off hits, and this is where vultures fall short. Their thick feathers easily shield them completely from smaller attacks, but because of their hollow bones, blunt fours can easily crush their defenses and take them down in only a hit or 2. So while they can defend a carcass from hordes of smaller scavengers, they don't have much counterplay towards bigger, more aggressive brawlers.
The command post is now under hostile control.
That's tough.
The Woodpecker build.
How is a vulture under a woodpecker? I've been lied to my whole life. How?
Spent the bulk of their evolution points optimizing and perfecting the peck attack, both in power and efficiency, with one goal in mind: to be able to hit insect players through cover. Burrowing is one of the safest, most effective ways insect players can avoid combat. But the Woodpecker absolutely demolishes this strategy. One of the main advantages of this strategy is that having a powerful beak that's highly effective at drilling through wood also just means you've got a super sharp beak that's highly effective as a general purpose weapon. One of the main disadvantages of this strategy is that pecking at wood gives the woodpecker's location away,
Facts.
alerting more powerful predators to its presence while it's in the middle of pecking and is distracted. One particular woodpecker build, the toucan, opted to spec into more bulk and
Ain't no way a toucan is a woodpecker. Ain't no way. Listen, shout out to TierZoo. We about to fall in love. I done learned like 20 things in this video already.
and an even more powerful beak, which, while less useful for attacking insects through the wood, is still extremely powerful for PvP. All in all, interesting strategy. By no means flawless, but definitely has some solid strengths. So, I know I've been pretty hard on flightless birds up until now, so you might be surprised to see me rate penguins as upper mid-tier rather than low tier. The difference is, penguins actually swapped out their wings for an arguably equally viable alternative, flippers, which essentially allow them to fly through the water with incredible agility. This gives them a downright broken matchup against fish. However, this strategy is pretty much only viable on servers where there are no land-based predators that penguins would still need to worry about.
Dang.
So if for whatever reason a few polar bears ever spawn in the Antarctic server, it's kind of game over for that
It's
entire
over with
build.
for them boys.
The predators they have to contend with in the water are even
Seals.
more dangerous,
Woo!
and while their agility does help them dodge attacks, ultimately it's still a totally one-sided matchup. Their strategy is pretty cool and actually fairly dominant due to limited competition, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the entire penguin player base collapse if the devs ever add new DLC in the form of an Antarctic land predator, or even if they just buff
Facts.
the land mobility of the leopard seal. Still, top of C tier is a respectable position for a flightless bird.
Listen, I seen a goose 3-piece a human before. So if this is, what is it? F, D, hold up, A, B, C, D. F, D, C, this is C tier, right?
At the bottom is
Hold up.
a respectable position.
Oh no, this is B tier. All
Goose.
right.
I've got an entire video dedicated to the Goose build, but in short, the Goose has solid base stats, including above average hit points. However, its abysmal power stat leads it to rely heavily on intimidation to secure territory. This can be unbelievably effective at times, and it's not uncommon to see top tier predators flee an encounter that they easily could have won. Still, the obvious flaw in this strategy is that if the Goose's opponent resists being frightened, the Goose will be wide open to a punishing counterattack. In addition, the Goose's weak spot is easily exploitable by intelligent players. Attack. If the Goose's opponent
Yo, cuz broke his neck.
resists being frightened, the Goose will be wide open to a punishing counterattack. In addition, the Goose's weak spot is easily exploitable by intelligent players, so careless aggression tends to be the Goose's biggest strength and biggest weakness at the same time. All in all, still a surprisingly effective strategy.
Now I'm gonna be honest, bro. I'm scared of gooses, geeses, and ducks, boy. I've done seen them attack people, bro. I'm good. I don't want no smoke with the ducks or the goose.
The Heron build put a huge amount of evolution points into maxing out the puncture damage it can deal with its beak, and it did so to great success. Herons have one of the highest damage pecs of any bird, and frequently
Jesus.
one-hit their targets, even those with scale armor like large fish and juvenile crocodiles. The effectiveness of their piercing
Crocodiles.
attack is amplified by their long neck,
Ain't no
which
way.
gives their attacks a deceptively long range, giving their strikes an almost cobra-like flash to them. They have downright oppressive matchups against fish, amphibians, and all other small aquatic builds. One vulnerability they do have is that their flight ability has a lot of startup, making it a bit less reliable as an escape option if they do happen to get ambushed. Still, it's certainly not terrible. Another weakness is that their long neck presents a bit of a weak point, making lunging forward with repeated pecking attacks a bit risky if you get too predictable about it. Good players will be able to punish careless lunges quite hard.
Fam grabbed him by the mouth and said, "Hey, listen, you keep trying to eat my meat. You keep trying to put my meat in your mouth, all right? I'm going to have some problems." Pause.
In high B tier, we have the Falcon, a raptor build that opts to defeat its opponents using speed and superior maneuvering rather than actual power. Falcons actually have a below average power stat for a raptor, and don't deal particularly high damage in close combat. Their talons are pretty small compared to hawks, owls, and eagles, and so instead of slashing and stabbing with their claws, falcons actually punch with their feet to disorient or concuss their target,
That's
and then finish the
crazy.
fight with their more powerful beak. In the right situation, this can deal absolutely massive damage, enough to one-shot a mid-sized target at full HP. The drawback of this strategy is that falcons can only dish out high damage when they have the time to build up speed first. This makes the falcon a pretty poor defender for objective
Yeah.
game modes, and means the falcon can struggle to win fights if its first attack doesn't connect, as follow-up attacks will likely not have the same force built up as the first. Still, the burst damage potential of this build cannot be ignored, so it earns its spot in high B tier.
My man is one tapping. I've had enough. The ostrich is under a songbird. This is egregious. Ostrich, get your stuff together. The LVP of this video is the ostrich. You are under a song. Oh my God. What is this?
This might seem like an odd inclusion to cap off B tier, but songbirds are a highly efficient build for their size, and
Crazy.
do deserve recognition on this tier list. This is a huge group, including finches, starlings, sparrows, wrens, and birds of paradise. And while some are flashier than others, they all have relatively similar stats, with extremely high agility being their core stat. Unlike many of the builds lower on the tier list that have difficulty getting themselves airborne quickly, Songbirds have extremely low startup on their flight move, allowing them to reposition themselves easily and quickly. This makes their approach very difficult to punish, making Songbirds excellent at chipping away at defensive players, and makes them great at stealing loot from slower builds.
Yoink. Oh, that's
Their
tough.
safety in numbers strategy can actually be somewhat intimidating and disorienting too,
that's wild.
making it rather difficult to attack a party of Songbirds mid-flight. While they certainly aren't invincible, having one of the lower HP stats among birds, they're an often overlooked but undoubtedly successful bird build.
That's crazy. Swans? Oh,
At the bottom
yeah.
of A tier, we have the Swan.
Oh, man.
The Swan is essentially a goose that has the power stat to actually back up its attempts to intimidate. The wing attacks that most bird players use do very little damage and aren't very useful aside from pushing other players around. The Swan's wing attack can break bones and concuss foes. Because of this, Swans are one of the best builds at controlling important points of interest, as their hyper-aggressive playstyle can result in huge territory gains. Of course, they do have the same weaknesses as geese, so targeting the Swan's neck with an attack can defuse the threat. But this is a bit riskier of a play against a Swan than against a goose. All around, sturdy defender, definitely A tier.
I know my man just now out here choke slamming.
Next in A tier we have
Freaking
the Owl,
Swans,
the
man.
avian faction's premier
Lex was
stealth
good.
assassin build. It owes this reputation to its special ability, which allows it to fly completely silently. This makes the Owl's strikes very difficult to defend against, as players just about never see them coming. While not as stacked in the power department as their daytime counterparts, Owls do have quite solid base stats. While they aren't likely to one-shot high HP targets, they do have enough force behind their attacks to be able to defend themselves and their territory, even from powerful enemies. In addition to granting the Owl the Silent Flight perk, the Owl's thick, bushy feathers offer additional defense against attacks, enabling it to stand its ground in important objective defense scenarios. Interestingly, the Silent Flight perk did come at the cost of the waterproof ability that most bird feathers have,
That's tough.
meaning that falling into the water or getting caught in a rainstorm can actually disable the Owl's flight ability.
What?
A pretty unique weakness, and certainly something that can be played around, but interesting nonetheless.
Hawks and Eagles.
In the middle of A tier, we have the Eagles and Hawks. Hawks and Eagles follow the same basic strategy, both having tailored their builds to focus on dealing maximum damage with their talons. Hawks are the smaller variants of this group, and because of this they are
Famous. Hey, didn't I tell you? Listen, these Hawks and Eagles is something different.
far more agile. While not as powerful as eagles, their agility enables them to weave through cover better than most birds of prey. This makes them well suited for rushing down players both in open terrain and in dense, difficult to navigate terrain like forests. Eagles, in contrast, are much more powerful, but their larger size and wider wingspan prevents them from entering dense forests. Still, in open prairies and mountains, eagles can be incredibly effective, dealing absolutely brutal damage with their enormous dagger-like talons, enough to take down players in higher weight classes without even requiring team strategies. These are without a doubt some of the strongest bird builds in the game for PvP, and have been for quite some time.
Boy, I seen a group of pelicans jump. What's that one that got like the big throat paws? Seagull. A seagull. I seen pelicans jump them at the beach one time in Miami. Crazy, bruh.
At the top of A tier, we have the grappler tank hybrid, the Pelican. The Pelican's main strength is its throat pouch. Grappling
No, okay, so I seen they jumped a pelican. I seen a whole bunch of birds jump a pelican. I can't remember what the bird was. Maybe it was a seagull.
enemy players can be a highly effective takedown strategy, but birds struggle with this since they can't use their wings to grab, and since their beaks aren't always the most reliable grappling weapons, sometimes leading to targets escaping. The Pelican's grapple is, in contrast, almost totally inescapable, and works on targets much larger than you might think. While this
What that
attack
mouth
style is
do?
most effective against fish, it's quite powerful against other bird, rodent, and amphibian players, although it does have its limitations. This, combined with the Pelican's overall bulk, makes it one of the most difficult birds to take down in single combat, and enables it to stand its ground against even top tiers like canines.
That's
So
crazy.
those of you who follow the channel for a while can probably guess what the top tier birds are going to be.
All right, this is my first zoo tier video or TierZoo video. Let me think. All right, he hasn't mentioned seagulls. Maybe seagulls are up there. Let me see. What's another bird that it could be? I would have thought vultures were up there, but they're trash. What's that other? I don't know, bro.
If you can't, that's probably a good indication that you should be subscribed.
Yeah, I subbed. A what?
Those of you wishing the devs could unban the Velociraptor build, look no further than the Secretary Bird, as it has basically all the same awesome abilities and more. Hunting on foot and in pairs, they prove time and time again that striking from the sky is overrated. They can easily defeat other high-tier builds such as the Cobra and Mongoose with their high damage kicks. Their stomp move has extremely high accuracy, allowing Secretary Bird players to score game-ending headshots with ease. And they do all this without completely sacrificing their flight ability. If they ever find themselves outmatched, which only ever happens against builds in higher weight classes, they can still retreat to the sky or treetops. The fact that this strategy works in Africa, one of the most unforgiving servers of all time, is proof enough to me that this is the optimal raptor.
That's crazy.
These last two builds are about equally matched, both opting for the same specialization, intelligence.
Listen, Mr. Ostrich, get yourself together. All right? Get yourself to... There's no way I ever would have thought a parrot is at the top of the list, bro. A vulture. They told us vultures were dangerous in school, bro. They come, they eat the carcasses, and they getting out, bro. Listen, the parrot.
Parrots are an extremely unique build with several powerful abilities, not the least of which is their sonic shriek, which can drive away just about any player who invaded their territory, especially when employed by a coordinated team. In addition, due to their prehensile beak, parrots have the highest dexterity of any bird, putting them among the best users of the tool use ability. And with an extremely high lifespan, if there was any build that could replace humans if humans ever get their intelligence nerfed, I'd bet on the parrot. I made an entire video on parrots if you're interested, but when it comes to intelligence, there's one avian build that argues.
All right. Parrot? A parakeet is a parrot, right? What the? I don't know any other bird. Is it a cardinal? I don't know, bruh.
Arguably outclasses them. Corvids, such as magpies, crows, and ravens, also opt for a high intelligence playstyle, but with a far more expansive social aspect to it. While plenty of bird builds use cooperative team strats, the best corvids operate using a network effect, where knowledge is shared with a huge amount of players over vast distances. This knowledge can include useful points of interest, or even blacklists of dangerous areas or players to avoid.
That's crazy.
But even individually, corvids have a lot going for them. With significantly higher stealth than parrots, corvids are much better at staying out of conflict. Their pointy beaks, while not as useful for tool use, are a much better combat tool for dealing quick damage. It's also more useful for pressuring and poking opponents, or for provoking larger players into battle, so that they can reap the benefits of the aftermath.
So these is instigators. Yo, these birds are smart. Hold on. They done. Hey, cuz, you gonna let him hit you like that? That's crazy. You better swing on him. They start fighting. One dies. I'm coming back for the food. That's crazy.
Corvids are one of the best builds at making use of human-made items, and quickly figure out ways of abusing the system to score quick loot. All in all, corvids are basically what you'd get if you gave monkeys wings. Easily a top-tier build. So there you have it, the complete bird tier list. Or rather, as complete as I thought possible for YouTube. If I didn't do a segment on your favorite bird, please let me know in the comments. Despite being the longest video I've ever made, there were still a few birds that I cut from the video for time's sake, or because I felt I couldn't discuss the bird properly without getting into territory that was potentially too violent for YouTube.
Hold up. I wonder why birds prefer nesting in trees that have massive spikes everywhere. Surely this is purely coincidental and has nothing to do with psychopathic hunting behavior.
If you're interested in watching the full director's cut version of this video, it's available to watch on Nebula, a subscription streaming service built by and for creators. Nebula.
This is the greatest channel on YouTube, all right? The greatest channel on YouTube. Which tier list are we watching next? Oh my God. Listen, I'm about to start binging these videos, ladies and gentlemen. Which one we got to do next? Make sure y'all head over there and sub. I got the link to this video down below. All right. TierZoo, greatest channel I've ever. Look, I watch Vsauce. All right. Amazing channel. I love knowledge, all right? And I feel like I gained at least 5 wrinkles in my brain watching this video. I like that. Yeah. But listen, y'all like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. I'm about to go check out Nebula. I got to see the birds that do that, bruh. That's crazy. But until next time, we out of here.